Being recorded.
Ready to go? You guys good? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our Community Needs Assessment Community Development Block Grant CARES Act. My name is Rachel Sinzi. I am the Neighborhood Services Supervisor for the City of Jefferson. Somebody before the meeting asked me what is neighborhood services, so I will talk about that. Neighborhood services is basically everything that is occurring in a neighborhood, from trash and recycling, which we manage. We do household hazardous waste. We do historic preservation. We also manage the community's community development block grant. Jefferson City is an entitlement community. And what that means is that we get every year we get roughly $300,000 a year to go towards some of our programs that are within the city. We barely qualify as an entitlement community. We are the smallest that I've ever seen so far. I'm not going to say that we are the smallest, but I haven't seen anybody smaller thus far. So we're barely qualifying there. So we normally get roughly about $300,000 a year to do neighborhood activities. We're here tonight. We are pursuing a community development block grant, state CARES Act grant. We're going to apply for up to $2 million. One of the components of the application is to do a community engagement process. You're going to see this community engagement process if you hang in there with me over and over and over again throughout this kind of history making proportion funding through CARES Act and American Rescue Plan. I'm going to take this actually. So I've got this board that we kind of rove around City Hall with. I've used it several times in different exercises. And the reason why I'm pointing out, I just want you to know the kinds of funding that is available. And also to get the understanding that if you have a project in mind and it doesn't necessarily fit very well within this funding opportunity, we have other funding opportunities that are coming down the chute. So just to hang in there and always participate with us when we're doing some of these community engagement processes. So right here, we have our Cdbg. This is our normal annual $300,000 roughly a year. We do down payment assistance for low to moderate income folks. And when I say low to moderate income folks, we do have a little bit of astigmatism in this city. Low to moderate income means that if you as an individual person make less than $42,950 a year, if you make less than that, you qualify. You qualify for down payment assistance, you qualify for affordable housing. In Jefferson City, that's a lot of our state workers, our police officers, teachers starting out. That's a lot of our folks. So we want to make sure that we understand that we're not talking about extreme poverty in most cases. We're talking about almost $43,000 a year. So the other things that we fund with Cdbg is emergency home repair. That's if your sewer lateral goes out, your furnace goes down, something that is truly an emergency and you don't have the cash and savings to be able to come up with the repair. We can help you out there. Demolition, public service. So each year we have the option to take 15% of that $300,000 and give it to a public service entity to do some of the things that will fulfill HUD's, the Housing and Urban Development's national objectives that we have to do. So if we have a similar mission, we can work together. Also infrastructure, which usually amounts to, traditionally we've done a sidewalk project once every 2 years. So we had the Chestnut East Miller sidewalk project to the transit facility, and we're also preparing a sidewalk project for Adams and Hickory in that neighborhood as well. So that's normal money. And then we have our Cdbg CV. So Community Development Block Grant, anytime that you see the CV, it's CARES Act. And I put this board up there as a demonstration that it's all Cdbg, but it's all different programs. So whenever you're looking at all the different types of federal money, they all call it CARES Act. and they all call it American Rescue Plan, but there's probably 50 plus programs under each entity. So it gets confusing to break that down. And that's what we're here for, is to really facilitate that process. So just keep that in mind. So the CARES Act, we received as a city, because we are an entitlement community, we received $413,000 to prepare for, prevent, and respond to COVID-19. So we did a process similar to this process like we're doing this evening. And we came up with, out of that process, childcare facilities are a gap in our community. And we knew this as city employees anecdotally, because we inspect, we license those daycare facilities. We know that most of our in-home daycares, licensed in-home daycares, don't exist anymore. We had a large daycare facility closed down about a month ago. We know this is a struggling point. So what we've done is, and we actually have this open. So if you know a child care facility operator, nonprofit, for-profit, this is an opportunity that they can go for, and it's open right now. Applications are due October 31st. We'll probably award sometime this winter, and then they can spend the funds in 2022 to either cover their operating costs, pay their staff, retrofit their buildings to maybe adjust their classroom space. There's opportunities there for daycare facilities. The next funding opportunity that we'll be working on, Cdbg DR, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. This is response from the tornado and the floods. So how that works is, we have a FEMA disaster, we get it declared, and when there's enough individual assistance applications that go through, it triggers this pot of money to open up. So we are currently working with the State of Missouri Department of Economic Development on submitting our proposal. Our proposal is due May of 22. We hope to have it in sooner than that, but that doesn't mean that we'll be able to get spent, because then we're at the whim of the state. So what is the Cdbg DR? It's going to be a little over $7 million, and it's all going towards housing. So you can acquisition, demolition, planning, housing counseling services, rehabilitation of properties, new construction of single-family homes, multifamily home, new construction, relocation assistance, and down payment assistance up to 100% of the down payment. So that's going to be our next project after this one. Where that funding is going to be located, we're targeting the area that the tornado hit. New construction, so everything has to be spent in that little strip that the tornado went through, except for new construction of single family homes, new construction of multifamily homes. That money can be spent anywhere in Cole County. And so we'll stay tuned for that funding opportunity as well. This is the funding opportunity that we're pursuing tonight. State Cdbg CV. Again, CARES Act. So if you look up on the PowerPoint, there's the categories that we will apply for. So we normally do not get to apply to the state of Missouri for funds, because we are an entitlement community. We get that $300,000 a year. With the CARES Act, it came in 3 waves. So wave 1 and wave 3, that went into the $413,000 that we got through this CARES Act opportunity. We did not have access to wave 2. That's what this is. So the state has made available just under $18 million for entitlement communities to apply for. There's 11 entitlement communities in the state of Missouri. So if we do the math, that comes out to about 1.6 million. So we're going to do the full ask for 2 million, and I think we're going to walk away with some funding, because nobody can ask more than 2 million. So the funding components that we can act, the eligible activities, community facilities, general infrastructure, economic development, planning, and public services. And I actually have the application guidelines up here. If anybody would like a copy, you can see all the eligible. I saw head nodding yes over here. You guys can see all the eligible activities within anybody else? What one? Sure. All right, good for you. Came prepared. All right. So what we would do, yes, and how that will work is there will be, so we have a couple of things that got identified in the survey that are within already existing planning documents. But then if it comes to fruition that we need to open up, we'll do a request for proposals project. And we'll say, we're going to open up a RFP for community facilities in planning and public services. Submit your projects. And then we'll select from those and then put that in, incorporate that into the proposal. No. Right, that's right. That's right. But we don't know what to request until we know what you all want. So that's why we have to do this process. And that kind of comes, nice segue, into the application process. So the first step 1, determine unmet needs. Step 2, review eligibility and Cdbg CV regulations. So we're kind of in the crosshairs between both of those. The unmet needs was the unmet needs survey. That was a survey that went online about a month ago. We received the survey results and we put them out. Now we're in that process of selecting the projects. This is, I think, like page 9 of the proposal that we have to submit. And if you have the good enough eyes to be able to see it, is the community needs assessment that we put out through the SurveyMonkey. We did not reinvent the wheel. It was a little frustrating because I think that we could have really maybe dug a little bit deeper on some of the questions specifically for Jefferson City. But there is value to using this. So every community in the United States is using the same form. So whenever they're filling out these forms and they're submitting it for funding, it tells state governments and federal governments, hey, we probably need to invest more tax dollars in these areas because these assessments come back and this is the required need. Now we're going to talk about our survey. So I'm actually going to hand it over to Carly Rankemeyer. She is Neighborhood Services Specialist, and she worked really hard on the survey and compiling the information. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. I do have, if you're not familiar with the survey or the survey results, I actually have the printed out copies that I can hand out. So if you just want to raise your hand, I can come around and give you a copy of those as well. That's that.
Okay, so the community needs assessment, we did this so we could identify unmet needs in our community. So let's see. I have the flicker. Okay. So the first topic is public works infrastructure. So how do you rate it? We have fair, poor, or good were the categories. So our sanitary sewer system ranked good overall. Our storm and sewer was poor, sidewalks poor, bridges fair, water system fair. So that's what our community ranked our public works infrastructure. And then we have public services. So our fire protection scored good, police services scored good, parking was fair, code enforcement was fair. That's the results for public services. Next is the community facilities. So we have community center ranked good, infant daycare was fair, mental health counseling was fair, teen and youth center fair, senior citizen center was also fair, hospitals good. And the next category was housing. Housing for the disabled ranked poor. Single family housing was fair. Senior housing was fair. Home ownership assistance was poor. Energy efficiency improvements, poor. And the next is education profiles. And for the profiles, all of them scored fair. Entrepreneurship, training, it was a tie between fair and poor. And the last category was economic development. Job creation scored fair. Startup business assistance was poor. Employment training was poor. And other economic development needs scored fair. And so for this question, we asked the community to rank our community's priority needs in order of importance. So the first priority is public works infrastructure. Second is housing. Third, public services. Fourth, economic development. Fifth, education. And sixth was community facilities. This question asked, how would you prioritize funding? And eligible uses of Cdbg CV funds must prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID-19. So this is how these projects were categorized, prioritized. First was general infrastructure. Second, economic development. Third, public service. Fourth, community facilities. Fifth, demolition. And sixth was planning. This question, we asked the community to identify potential projects that are eligible for Cdbg CV funding. So we kind of identified these projects, and we asked the community which of these they support. So housing needs assessment, 58.26%. Demolition of dangerous buildings was 53.58%. Third was widening of Monroe Street to create a 2-lane street with better access to Capital Region. And the fourth was other. And so we had 101 responses to this other category. It's where the community could write in other projects that could be eligible for this funding. And that's what we're going to go over next. And there were quite a few. I tried to combine the ones that kind of said the same thing. But for the most part, these are all of the other projects the community identified. This will focus on the infrastructure projects that were identified. So we have sidewalks, pedestrian crossing signals in the Eastland and Seven Hills area. Repair sidewalks and curbs on the south side, East Ashley Street specifically. Repair streets, Industrial Boulevard, stormwater and flooding. Then some other projects, complete the Greenway, adding a pedestrian bridge to the Ellis Boulevard Highway 54 overpass, street repair for Jefferson Street and Madison Street, High Street overpass, and then some other projects. In the next couple slides, we'll focus on community facility projects the community proposed. So we have rehab the community center on Dunklin Street, a wet shelter or low barrier shelter for the homeless, a youth center, domestic violence shelters, then we have licensed infant child care. There's another project. And then we have emergency low barrier shelters and planning for transitional housing. And all of these comments are found in the survey results. You can see those. Then we have a convention center or community-based option, housing for the homeless. And that's all for community facilities. And the next is public service projects and planning projects that the community identified. For public service, someone recommended a new public safety training center for police, ambulance, fire, and volunteer agencies that can double as a mission control center during pandemics and natural disasters. And then for planning projects, we have planning for transitional housing and then building community bridges development plan. Next is economic development projects identified by the community. We have job training to get the unemployed back to gainful employment, support the development of small businesses in the area, workforce development, focus on getting better jobs in the area. And so for these next ones, they're non-priority activities, which they're eligible products or projects, but only for $1 million, and we want to go for the full $2 million. So we have, we need more art in public parks for all ages, getting MSP going. We had a lot of comments for dedicated pickleball courts. And we're going to let Parks and Rec know that this was a very popular comment we received on our survey so that they can plan accordingly. We have maintain historic properties, revitalization of the historic foot district, even better support for trails, parks, and outdoor recreation opportunities. And I believe that was all of the non-priority activity comments. And then for the next couple of slides, these are non-eligible comments. They didn't fit into an eligible funding category. They just didn't fit anywhere very well. So I won't read all of these because there are quite a few of these, but I'll leave them on the screen. And it's also in the survey results. And this is the last slide for other comments. And next we have public participation. So we invite you guys to come forward if you have any projects. We're thinking maybe like 5 minutes for each proposal, if that works.
I'm going to go ahead, before we get into that public participation component, I'm going to turn around. I have another side to my board. A lot of the survey responses we got were like, we need more sidewalks. Okay, we need where? We have stormwater issues. We know where. So what we want when we're doing these public engagement processes is we want specifically identified projects. That way we can go after them. And I will say 9 times out of 10, we know it's there. We know it's a problem. We know it's an issue. It always comes down to the funding to be able to solve the problem. So out of the survey responses, we kind of pulled out the projects, those things that were identified as projects. So under infrastructure, Eastland, Seven Hills Road, sidewalks. repair Industrial Boulevard, East Ashley sidewalks and curbs, High Street viaduct, pedestrian activated crossings at schools, pedestrian bridge to Ellis Highway 54 overpass, Jefferson and Madison Street repair, Weirs Creek at the Coca-Cola plant, two-way Monroe Street, community facilities, Dunkland Community Center rehabilitation, a domestic violence shelter, low barrier homeless shelter, disabled homeless youth shelter, a youth center, and childcare facilities. Under the public service, emergency operations center, COVID testing, economic development, job training and workforce development, a small business incubator, soft skills, life skill education. Under planning, a housing needs assessment. Fire is a standards of cover. It's a strategic plan to increase fire safety in the community. It enables the fire department to be, and EMS to be well equipped to be able to take on emergency situations. It also makes fire insurance rates go down if a community participates in that. So there is a community component there. Building community bridges strategic plan, and then demolition, voluntary demos. So those were projects that we saw as a manageable bite. They were identified. We could take them on. But then we also have to remember the funding opportunity is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. So then we look at those projects. So some of the things that we identified, two-way Monroe Street was identified within both the cities and the counties of sales tax as a potential. And so we have an artery in our community that goes to a hospital that turns into one way right before it gets to the hospital. That's a very good response mechanism to combating the coronavirus. The other thing that we also put on, so this was an identified project. The other thing, housing needs assessment. The information that I have about housing and a lot of the comments that were made within the survey process specifically related to housing. The only housing information that I have very little data. I have a whole lot of anecdotal information. So the city has hired a consultant that is putting together a housing needs assessment for us. That should come out December, January, somewhere in that time frame. And what it's going to do is it's going to give us a game plan and a planning document to where we can go, the city can use, nonprofits can use, individuals can use, housing developers can use, but meaning that we're attacking our housing situation in a unified manner instead of everybody doing their own thing. So we're taking it on as a community. The other activity that was identified is voluntary demos. The city currently has a $1.1 million backlog of demolitions. Not all of those would be voluntary. Some of those would be abatement. But that's a funding opportunity there. But the reason why we're all here is you can also, community organizations can also lobby for their own project. So if you would like to come up to the podium or take the mic from where you're at and advocate for your project, you're more than welcome to do so. Any takers? Okay. And if you come to the podium, and we'll go ahead and do the folks in the room, and then we'll open up to our online audience. Go ahead and announce your name, and if you're here to represent an organization, please do so and give us a feel for your project. Really sell it.
Hi, my name is John Blosser. I'm on the board for Transformational Housing. This is Kathy Fries. She is also a board member with me. And we were formed 2 years ago, roughly, following the tornado. And our focus was, we looked at how the tornado came through and demolished so much low-income housing. Most of the homes along Jackson were rental properties. And in a lot of cases, those people had to leave, and there was nothing provided for them. And so what we decided to do was to take on the project of providing low-income rental property. We're serving a financial group that's just below what Habitat is serving. And our first project is 203 Cherry Street. We've taken over a 4,500 square foot historic building, as it turns out, that was burned shortly after the tornado. And we've gutted it, and we're going to make 5 units out of it that'll be 1 to 3 bedroom, low income. And so we're looking, and we're hoping to do this with other properties. So we're looking for other properties. We're all volunteers. We don't have any paid staff, and we rely on charitable donations to do our work. This would be, if we apply for grants here, this would be the first grant that we've applied for. But everything else and we've got enough money to finish Cherry Street, we think, is going to be charitable donations. So, but we see a very large need for low income, either transitional or just low income permanent housing, and that's what we're trying to address. So if you have a good solid piece of property that you want to give us, we'd be happy to take a look at it. Thank you.
How you guys doing? My name is Tyree Bindum. I'm actually from Columbia, Missouri. I've been in Columbia for about 40 years. I'm the Chief Evolutionary Officer of Urban University. We are a edutech startup and incubator. We assist businesses all over and cities all over the world with getting access to their data, access to solutions, and innovative ways to develop in ways that in communities that deal with disparity. A lot of the challenges that you listed and the community listed that as poor and fair when it comes to workforce development, entrepreneurship, the ways that you take money and you make money. When you look at recovery, many communities have money and you spend it, but you don't make money. It's built into and you put it into the infrastructure, but it's not ways to really help people recover, help people actually get the soft skills, get learn how to do emerging technology so that they know how to get out of manufacturing administration, to get into social media, to get into web development, to get into different types of skill sets. And so the companies that I run, one of our companies is blackdemographics.com. We're the only Black-owned data agency in the nation. And so there's 20,000 cities in the US. There's 400,000 neighborhood associations. Less than 5% of these cities actually have a strategic plan. So Jeff City, to actually have your 20-year strategic plan is actually kudos. That's huge. But one of the things when I look at Jeff City, I don't necessarily look at the 20,000. I just look at 50 because this is actually the state capital. So when you look at the state capital, Today I went to a meeting in Columbia. It was the governor's Show Me Recovery Task Force, and we had a conversation, and they started the discussion basically asking for about your challenges. And they said, well, you know, we're not here to offer solutions. We're here to trust the community experts and trust you guys. And in my head, I was thinking, you know, all you guys make six figures. You should be telling us what we should do. But what I found out is that this is a very common challenge that we face in all the different communities. You know, you have 1,600 communities in the nation that had vibrant economic centers, especially when it comes to those of melanated descent and people of African descent. They had, you know, the Foot District, when you count the number of businesses, the Sharp End in Columbia, we had 600 businesses, 400 homes, all of it's gone. There's 2 buildings left. So this happened in 1,600 communities in our nation. And no one has really figured out how to recover from this. So I've been working on this for the past 10 years to make sure that we get access to data, to make sure that you get access to all of the staffing, accounting, technical assistance. So I've recruited some of the top minds to follow me on this mission to be able to assist cities across the nation with getting access to their data. I'm here because a good friend of mine, Patty, invited me to help Jeff City. And I actually, there's a group that formed, and I'm here to support that group with getting access to data, getting access to resources. And really, one of the things that we offer that no one else does is we look at all the cities to measure the solutions that are effective and that have been proven to work. So that when you try to start something, it's not you just starting something as a pilot and you don't know if it's going to work or not. Because with these funds that's coming, especially with the $350 billion that's coming from the American Recovery to the different communities, many of these communities, they know that this is the last shot and the last opportunity to actually recover. And so, you know, I'm here just as a support, really to accompany communities, to get access to data, to get access to solutions, but also to create, you know, we have a methodology where we go into the community, because it's one thing for the institutions to set the plans, but if you don't have the engagement and if you don't actually have the ability to sustain it and to grow it, you're not going to change the demographic. So I'm here to support in that way.
Good evening. My name is Adrian Hendricks. I am the 4-H state specialist for cooperative extension and research for Lincoln University. I also pastor the Joshua House Church here in Jefferson City, Missouri, and I'm the founder for the Center for Change and Community Life. And I want to thank Brother Tyree for his comments, and again, the gentlemen for their comments, because I really appreciate the fact that we're having this kind of conversation. And it's one that needs to be had. In particular, how we look at Jefferson City as a holistic community. And for several years, maybe starting around 2011, 2010, I met with the current Mayor Landwehr at that time, and we were talking about issues that we saw in the city and things that needed to take place, particularly with communities that are low income, underserved families, and with minority youth. At that particular time, we started looking at ways that we might be able to remedy those things by creating some programs or some structures that would benefit young people. One of those concepts became the Jefferson City Youth Advisory Council, which I put together somewhere around 2009, which was a consortium of all youth serving organizations in the city. From that, we started to do other projects like the Cole County Youth Day, which was another big project looking at how do we assess young people's thoughts, ideas, and give them voice. And then how do we put our resources in a space that will give young people opportunities so that they can have sustainability and they can thrive as well. Those things morphed and they continue to morph. And what I can appreciate about Mr. Tyree's comments is that someone has to have a conversation about the social and the cultural infrastructure of our city. Many of the things that you have listed on your board, I applaud them because we need them. We can go all down the line as far as facilities for young people, and having one Boys and Girls Club and one building community bridges, and one other program will not touch the other 6,500 students that are not engaged in those programs. Our Parks and Recs programs, which are based on your ability to pay in a lot of cases, or the YMCA, will not provide much of the resources, community development, workforce development, life skills, or entrepreneurship skills that young people need. And we know that these young people need things that will help them to cultivate and help them to develop. And so in 2015, we put together an organization called the Center for Change in Community Life, which was designed to identify holistic living in a community and provide those types of resources that they need. Everything from after school care and education to workforce development to health issues, fatherhood initiatives, and so on and so forth. These things we know are standing issues that need to continue to have support in our city. And so when we think about some of these things that we're talking about, again, tonight we can hone in on economic development, the job training and workforce development, for an example. Many years now, we've been talking about a small business incubator. When we were having meeting with many of those that are, city council members, we were having meetings years ago about how do we remedy some of these issues. And we knew that if there was a partnership possibly with the city Chamber of Commerce that would initiate an incubator program and a way for experienced businesses to adopt, if you will, and cross-train, if you will, young entrepreneurs, that would be a great addition to our community. We talked about having things, of course, that dealt with emergencies. And so even when we look at, I saw listed some of the housing needs for transitional living, for homeless shelters, for a men's shelter, those types of things that my church has to deal with our funds. And so when our community as a whole won't address some of these issues, it takes the very minimum resources that churches like mine and organizations like ours that we have to pull together and make up the difference. I'm saying that is possibly a flaw in how we are looking at community, and that there may be some reason to give a concept or put together the type of infrastructure that will allow this kind of support to be made. Now, the other side of this conversation I think is important is that there's always going to be a demographic that's going to voice. There's going to be a demographic that's going to have an opinion. They're going to show up at the meetings. And most of the time, those demographics are going to represent moderately educated and financially stable people, for the most part. Those who have access to internet, for the most part. And so even when we take our surveys, we have to understand that there's a population of people that will not be represented in that data. But we who are looking at that data have to make some decisions about who are not being voiced, who are not being heard. And so that says to me that even when we talk about things like tonight, how do we bring community engagement together? How do we facilitate these types of training centers and these types of projects? Building Community Bridges has a plan. Center for Change has a plan. There's probably 6 or 7 other organizations that I talked to in the last 3 weeks that have plans and have dreams, but they have no space. And I think a part of that issue has been because there's no space from the community to be engaged in the infrastructure. And I think that's a good place for us to start to look at how do we do these types of things? How do we cultivate resources that make it to the people that have need? How do we engage those bodies of people that are not typically engaged? So I have a couple of things that again, I think they're critical. I think they are necessary. The entrepreneurship and small business development incubator, that whole thing that needs to be done, right? Having a place for young people to be, in some case, the directors of their future. Having these type of youth advisory councils, having We modeled this off of Kansas City, who had their own young people that were serving with their mayor in partnership with their city, developing their own projects. They had their own budget, and they got to think about what would my community look like if it was to meet my needs and from a youth voice. I think those things are important. When we look at, our church is volunteering to be a workforce development site so that soft skills training and a lot of the things that you all are talking about here, those things can make it to the demographic of people that typically may have transportation issues, may be constrained to that side of town. These things need to be replicated in a lot of different spaces. There are other things that we look at, again, when we talk about how to be holistic. I can go on and on with organizations that have dream, have plan, have some support, but they just need that kind of backing, that kind of startup, right? That kind of endorsement. And so I'm hoping that the more that we get to hear about these things and about how we're going to approach them, that we are looking long term at putting those systems in place. Then those systems will have the ability to bring other supportive programs like the fatherhood initiative, like our male development initiatives that we have going on. A lot of those projects that really need to have place and spacement. We don't have facilities, right? We don't have opportunities to even try some new ideas because everything is very limited right now. So I would really hope that as we do that, we can think about that. And I posit that in light of what we know what will happen if we don't. We know that if we don't address some of these things, that the impact of COVID, let's just talk about youth for a minute, the impact of COVID with the increase of stress, the increase of depression, the increase of substance and drug use by young people will in turn cause those same young people to have a higher propensity to drop out of school, which will increase crime. And you'll be looking at not nice streets and sidewalks, you'll be looking at crime prevention issues and the reduction of property value. And so we know that these things have a domino effect if we don't really appropriately deal with them. And I'm hoping that when we submit some of these projects, these collaborations, even as I've been a member of the Council for Drug-Free Youth Board for many years, and I was a previous board member with the Boys and Girls Club, we know that there's strong need for these organizations to have facilities, to have resources, and to have program support. And those types of projects really can embrace a very holistic idea about what community needs to look like, and also cultural appreciation, which we've started in a lot of different ways, but we can continue that effort even with things like our Juneteenth celebrations and our Hispanic Latino celebrations that we have in the city. So I really do hope that as we are directing these funds, that there is some room for those types of development as we're building those facilities and as we're really trying to merge these programs together so that our city can be what we all need, not just what some need. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? All right. Anybody online? Okay. I just want to remind everyone, if you haven't signed in, if you're online, please put your name and your email address. And if you're with an organization, in the chat, that way we can go back and capture your information. Also, if you're here in person and you did not sign in at the door, please do so. What we do with your information is we put it in our constant contact list. That way, when we have future opportunities such as this, that we make sure that we get it to you directly. That way we can keep doing these things. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am. And people online can't hear, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on one of those microphones right there. Just hit there you go.
Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, so I'm Jan Shoemaker from the Jefferson City Racial Equity Group. And my question was more about deadlines and time frame of like when applications would need to be in roughly and so on like that?
Sure. So normally, and remember, like, government moves slow, and this is what I always try to warn people, and these are, stay persistent and hang in there. It's slow. So what it normally looks like, normally grants revolve on a 3-year cycle, meaning that we apply for a grant, and then about a year later we find out if we receive it. And then during that next year, we spend all our time doing the environmental reviews and the procurement process and all of the admin stuff. And then by the time year 3 rolls around, we're actually implementing our project and spending the money. So it takes a long time. It's a hurry up and wait process. We hurry up and get things together. We submit, we wait. And that's what I tell people. So like with our projects, with the city, with other grants, 21, we're doing those projects. 22 is already scheduled. 23 is when we're plugging in those new activities. That's normal. This is not normal. With the CARES Act, with the American Rescue Plan, I don't have a good concept of timeline because it's open on a rolling basis. So this opportunity dropped, I believe, at the end of July. And we read through the application package and realized we needed to get to work pretty quickly. So we're in that step 1, step 2 phase of putting together our application. This will be the last public meeting. So what we're going to do next, and as it sounds like, we're going to put out a request for proposals. We'll submit the request for proposals. We'll advertise it. We'll send it out through our constant contact list. And then that's when nonprofit organizations, your organizations that you're speaking of, you don't have to wait for that request for proposals to drop. You know what's going to be in it. What's going to be in it is what project do you want to do and how much is it going to cost? And if you don't quite have that worked out, if you find yourself struggling because you can't quite get the details worked out, don't forget, you can also apply for a planning opportunity. Hire somebody to come in and you can tell them all the information that you need help with, and they can help you formulate a strategic plan, a development plan, an action plan, whatever that may be. Don't forget that step, because don't forget, on the other side of this board, there's all that other funding that's coming down. So this isn't the only opportunity that's there. So if you have a planning document, and if you go to, I'm going to pull up, if you go to the city's website, I don't know if anybody has ever looked at our plans and publications. Go under the Planning and Protective Services Department. We have a whole list of already adopted plans. When you find a project, when you're thinking about a community need, and if you can find that in our comprehensive plan or one of our neighborhood plans, if you find it in there, it's already an identified project that has been approved by council. So it's already like here. And so we can take that and we can start moving on that and finding funding dedication for it and start implementing. So anytime that you have a planning document, it gives you justification for the ask. So when you're writing a grant application and you say, we need more homeless shelters. And if I don't have a planning document that says that, it's just because I say so, not because our community says so. So don't underestimate the value of a planning document in this process. So the next step, so we're going to do a request for proposals, I'm assuming. I'll have to get with staff and a few other people, but I'm just going to say that that's probably going to happen. Start formulating your project, get together your budget items, wait for the proposals to drop. When it does, you can submit it. There will probably be some sort of community review body that will have to be unbiased, so think about that too. And then we'll go ahead and move from there. Then we'll go ahead and put together our project proposal for the state. And that will have to undergo another public engagement process. So we'll put out our project proposal out to the public. We'll put it on our website. We'll put it in the newspaper. We'll send it out to our list. If you have other ideas on where that information should go, please tell me, because we want to make sure that we involve as many people as possible. When we put that information out there, there's going to be another public comment period, and that gives people the opportunity to say, your plan is great, your plan stinks. You can have that option to comment on what the proposal is going to be. Then we submit it to the state. And that's that hurry up and wait game. So then we wait, and we're kind of at the whim of the state and how quickly they can get things processed. The next step would be the award. And that's where we're going to have to look at, if we do this request for proposals, there's going to have to be a sub-granting process. And I want folks to think about this as well, because when I'm looking down this road, this is going to be a hard work. There's going to be pain points. There's going to be capacity issues. And I guarantee you within a year from now, you're going to hear on the news that the federal government and state government is holding on to all this money and it's not getting out to the people. It's not, for the most case, it's not for trying. It's because it has to trickle down. So the feds have to create a federal regulation before they can issue the money. Then the states get it and they have to create programs from scratch. But then even then, when the money finally does drop, think about, do we have enough construction companies in town to keep up with demand? We had a tornado, we had a hailstorm, and some people are still getting their roofs on from a hailstorm that occurred a year and a half ago. Managing the amount of money that is coming down, there will be capacity issues. So just be patient, but persistent. Hang in there, keep your voices heard, and we'll work on this together. So that would be the next step. Once we can, then what the city will do is we will receive the funding, and then some of it will be sub-granted out to some of these proposals that will be submitted. And then we'll work from there. We'd probably have an administration workshop, I'm assuming. But my point is to really I want to keep the lines of local government and the community, those communication lines open, because that's what's going to require. Government can't do it by itself, and the community can't do it by itself, but we have to do these things together in order to get that to happen. The other problem that I see that we really need some nonprofit partners with is, especially with some of the tornado recovery, if we're going to get this funding out to folks that truly need it, grants are reimbursable. You have to pay it first to get reimbursed. So if you can't afford to pay it out, how do you get it? So that's where we're going to, if we need to talk to lending institutions, if we need to talk to nonprofit partners where they're able to front this funding, we got to figure that out. That's going to be a problem because if we want to get money to these folks, we got to figure out a system. Edwin? Well, they can't hear you online.
Yes, Edwin Cooper. This is just a suggestion as you was going through that, Rachel, is, and I know I don't want to overwork your staff. I think because putting together a Cdbg application is a lot different. It requires more pieces than a regular grant application. Would it be beneficial, even before the NOFA drops or RFP drops, to possibly have a, hour or so workshops to go through the details of some of the things that you just mentioned? Not saying your city staff have to do it, because I know when you award the grant, you then go through pieces, but it may be beneficial for a nonprofit, just an hour or so workshop, what they need to look at in a Cdbg application, because regardless of what they're proposing, there are certain aspects of it that they're going to need to put together. They're just a suggestion. I don't want the staff to be overworked, but I don't know if it means contracting out with either. I know a lot of the planning commission do that, but they do that for different reasons. So it may get either a nonprofit that has some experience or a consultant to maybe give a workshop or just something. Just a suggestion.
No, I love that suggestion. We actually just did for the childcare facility. We did an application workshop at 3:00 right before this meeting to do the same thing. Like, here's the grant opportunity, here's the funding opportunity. When you're filling out this application, this is what we're looking for. That way, it gave everybody a fair opportunity, because it's a lot of work to put together. Most of the work happens at that application phase, at that proposal phase, because you're literally on paper and in your head, you're planning out that project from start to finish, and then you're looking at the results of a concept. So if you would like assistance, and we can do a workshop like that, I think that's a great idea. And that's, and that kind of segues into my next point. Like, government is always seen as an entity, and it is. But what we really are, we're a tool. Government is a tool that you need to use. The people that come that come and they're persistent and they speak loudly. They get their projects across because they figured out that government is a tool and they're using it to get the things that they think the community needs. Don't forget that we are here. We will assist you in this fair process as well, because we have to assist everyone. But that's something that we're here for, is to make sure that we're identifying these needs. We have to really work together as a community to go after some of these things. There's some things that government does well. So we're pretty good at public infrastructure. We do the roads, we do the streets, we do the sewer system. We're also pretty good at doing planning documents. We can plan out to 2040 and beyond. But we're not very good at running a homeless shelter. We don't. We're not very good at immediate response. You know, we have tornado money. It's, I don't know, 2019 and it's 2021 and we still don't have that going out to the streets. We're not good at that. We really rely on our community partners to be able to be that first reaction, and then we come up and kind of try to get whatever is left and try to recover that way. Timeline, I don't know. We're just going to take it one step at a time. It can be a complicated process, but we'll try to stay vocal about our process, try to keep our website updated, try to keep our social media going, which is just the city's social media. If you look up Jefferson City on Facebook and you see the logo, that's us. But are there any other questions? Ideas, suggestions? Okay. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you all for coming. I look forward to some proposals. I think we've got some takers in the audience, and that'll be exciting. I also, like when you mentioned, I want to get with you after the meeting and just make sure that we exchange contact information. And anybody else, I've got my cards downstairs I can go get. But I just want to make sure that keep talking, keep us filled in, and we'll be able to check some of these things off our list and provide some good things for our community. Thank you.